The glass doors of the bank opened as Monica James walked in. The cold autumn air came in with her. Her high heels made a clicking sound on the floor with each step. She adjusted her bag strap and stood in line, holding a check in her hand. Monica was tall and beautiful. She had smooth, dark skin that looked nice under the bank's lights. Her hair was long and framed her face well. She wore a blue jacket, a white shirt, black pants, and shiny shoes. She looked confident, something she worked hard for. "Good morning," she said politely to the security guard at the door. He nodded but looked at her a little longer than usual. Monica noticed this. She always noticed when people looked at her like she didn't belong. Her mom had called it the pause, that moment when people looked at her and made quick judgments. Inside the bank, people were busy talking, typing on computers, or counting coins. Monica looked around. She saw a couple talking about buying a house, a dad playing with his child, and an old man holding his money tightly. Monica looked at the check in her hand. The signature on it was new, and the amount was the largest she had ever received. It was the result of months of work on a project for a new tech company. She smiled to herself. She had been wanting to buy a nice notebook, and today she would. "Next," the voice of the teller pulled her from her thoughts. Monica stepped forward, smiling faintly at the older woman who was leaving. She put the check on the counter. The teller, an elderly man with white hair, barely looked at her. "Here to cash a check?" "Yes," Monica answered calmly, though the man's tone felt rude. He picked up the check like it was dirty, holding it carefully with his fingers. He looked at it closely under the light, squinting his eyes. Monica felt a bit nervous. She started to bounce her leg but kept her hand still on the counter. "Is there a problem?" The man didn't answer right away. He looked at her and then back at the check. "This is a large amount," he said, his voice sharp. "It's for a project I just finished," Monica said, trying to stay calm. The man looked at the check again, then back at Monica. "Are you sure this company is real? This check looks strange." Monica felt her chest tighten. She had worked hard for this payment. "Yes, I'm sure. I worked with them. It's real." The man frowned and tapped his fingers on the counter. He glanced around at the people nearby, who were starting to listen. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "we get a lot of fake checks here. More than you think." The words hit Monica like a slap. She felt her body freeze for a moment, but she quickly took a deep breath. "This check is not fake," she said firmly. The man didn't say anything at first. He picked up his phone and started typing. "I'm going to have to check this," he said loudly. People in line started to whisper. Monica felt their eyes on her, some curious, some uncomfortable. "That's fine," she said, though she felt tired of the situation. The man walked away with the check, and Monica was left standing at the counter. She felt exposed and alone. She straightened up, trying to remind herself to stay strong. She wouldn't let this man or this moment make her feel small. Time seemed to slow down as Monica waited. She tried to keep her calm, folding her hands neatly on the counter. The man returned after a long wait. He didn't sit down but stood over her, holding the check like it was evidence in a crime. "This doesn't look right," he said. Monica took a deep breath. "What do you mean?" Her voice was calm, but there was a small warning in it. The man looked at the check, then at Monica. "Are you sure you worked for this company?" "This check seems strange," he said, his voice full of doubt. Monica felt the heat of anger rise in her. "Yes, I'm sure. I did the work for them. It's real." The man didn't answer. He just looked at Monica, then back at the check. He tapped his fingers on the counter. "You'll have to wait," he said, looking around. "I need to check this out." The room grew quiet, and all eyes turned to Monica. Some people looked quickly away, but others stared at her, some with curiosity, others with judgment. Monica crossed her arms, trying to stay strong. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Never let them see you flinch." Monica clenched her jaw and held her ground. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice sharp. The man walked away to a back room, and Monica was left alone again. People around her whispered to each other, and she wondered if they were judging her. Behind her, a voice broke the silence. "This is ridiculous." Monica turned to see a man in his 40s standing behind her. He had gray hair and his face looked upset. "She's treating you like you're a criminal or something." Monica didn't answer right away. It wasn't the first time someone tried to help her, but sometimes it felt like charity, not real support. Still, she nodded. "Thank you," she said. The man shook his head. "It's wrong. She's treating you badly." His words felt kind, and Monica smiled tightly. She appreciated his support, but she kept her guard up. After a long wait, the man finally returned. He looked annoyed, like he was the one who had been made to wait. "It'll take a little time," he said, putting the check back on the counter. Monica frowned. "What does that mean?" The man waved his hand dismissively. "We need to check with the other bank. It could take today or tomorrow." Monica was shocked. "Tomorrow? Are you serious? This is my money. I need it now." The man didn't flinch. "That's our policy," he said, his arms crossed. "No, it's not," Monica snapped. "I've cashed checks here before with no problem." The man looked at her coldly. "I'm following the rules. If you don't like it, talk to the manager." Monica's patience broke. "Fine," she said, stepping back. "Get your manager. I want to talk to them." The man hesitated for a moment, but then walked away. The room felt even quieter now, and Monica could feel the stares of the people behind her. Some looked away quickly, but a few stared longer, judging her. The man who had spoken up earlier came forward again. "You don't deserve this. She's wrong." Monica looked at him, her frustration fading into something softer. "Thank you," she said quietly. The man nodded. "Can I record this? People need to see what's happening." Monica thought for a moment. She had seen videos like this before, people showing the unfair things that happened to them. But she also knew those videos could make her personal pain into a public story. Finally, she nodded. "Go ahead." A few minutes later, the manager came. She was calm but clearly uncomfortable. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Monica didn't waste time. "Yes, there is. This man is refusing to cash my check without any reason. He's making assumptions about me, and I'm tired of it." The manager looked at the teller, who stood silently behind the counter. "Let me see the check," she said. Monica waited, trying to stay calm. She wanted to yell, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Finally, the manager spoke. "There's nothing wrong with the check," she said, her voice a little apologetic. Monica relaxed slightly. "So, what happens now?" The manager nodded. "We'll process it right away. I'll do it myself." Monica nodded. "Thank you." The manager took the check and went to finish the transaction. Monica turned to the man who had spoken up. He gave her a small thumbs up. "This isn't over," Monica said quietly to herself. Monica sat in the small coffee shop across the street from the bank, staring down at her cup of coffee. The steam rose from it, but she barely noticed. Her mind kept replaying the events at the bank, how she'd felt small, judged, and helpless. But there was something else too, a slow burn of anger growing inside her. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced down at the screen. It was a message from her best friend Carla. "How did the bank go?" Monica hesitated for a moment before typing back. "It was a mess. Some teller treated me like I was a criminal. I had to get the manager involved." She stared at the message for a while before hitting send. She knew Carla would want to talk about it, but Monica wasn't sure she wanted to relive the whole thing again. A few moments later, Carla's reply came. "What happened exactly? I'm so mad for you right now." Monica sighed, rubbing her forehead. She didn't want to explain it all over again. It was too tiring, but at the same time, she wanted to talk about it. She needed someone to understand. "I'll tell you later. Just not in the mood to go over it right now." Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a news alert. She clicked on it without thinking. Video shows woman discriminated against in bank. Her heart skipped a beat. The video was of the exact moment she had stood at the counter, waiting for the manager. The video showed the teller, the questioning, the uncomfortable stares from the people around her. It even caught her turning to the man who had spoken up for her. She didn't know how she felt. Part of her wanted to scream. The video was out there now for anyone to see. Part of her wanted to disappear, to forget the whole thing ever happened. But another part of her felt empowered. She hadn't asked for it, but now people were seeing what had happened to her. She wasn't alone anymore. The phone buzzed again. It was Carla. "OMG, is this you?" Monica's fingers hovered over the screen. Her mind raced. She hadn't wanted this kind of attention. But now that it was out there was no going back. She could ignore it, or she could stand up and make sure people understood. She tapped her phone, typing slowly. "Yes, that's me." The next message from Carla came quickly. "You've got to do something about this, Monica. People need to know what happened. This isn't okay." Monica stared at the message for a long time. Her heart was pounding. She knew Carla was right. She couldn't just let it slide. She had to say something. But what? Her phone buzzed again. It was a number she didn't recognize. Monica answered, unsure what to expect. "Hello, is this Monica James?" A calm, professional voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is Detective Mark Thompson from the local police department. We've received a report about an incident at the bank earlier today. I'm hoping you can give us some details." Monica blinked, confused. "Report? What kind of report?" "We've seen the video that's been circulating, and we want to make sure we have all the facts. Would you be willing to talk about what happened?" Monica's mind was spinning. She hadn't expected this. I didn't file any report. I just wanted to cash a check." "I understand," the detective said gently. "We're just trying to gather information. If you could help us, it would be much appreciated." Monica sat back in her chair, running a hand through her hair. This was bigger than she thought. People were watching, and now the police were involved. She didn't know how to feel. Was this going to help her, or was it just going to bring more trouble? "I'll talk to you," she said finally. "When and where?" The detective gave her the details and promised to be in touch soon. After hanging up, Monica just sat there for a moment, letting the weight of everything settle on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a social media notification. She opened it, not sure what she'd find. The video was everywhere. People were commenting, sharing their thoughts. Most of them were angry, some were sympathetic, and others were questioning what had really happened. Monica bit her lip, feeling exposed. This wasn't how she'd imagined her day going. The sound of her phone buzzing again startled her. It was another message from Carla. "People are sharing your story everywhere. You're not alone in this. Everyone is pissed about how you were treated." Monica's chest tightened. She wasn't sure what to feel. She had never wanted to be the center of attention, but now it seemed like she had no choice. The world was watching her. She thought of the man in the bank who had stood up for her, the one who had spoken out, even when he didn't have to. Monica felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't all bad. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something bigger. She took a deep breath and typed a reply to Carla. "You're right. I need to do something. I can't let this slide." And with that, Monica made a decision. She wasn't going to be silenced. This wasn't just about a bad day at the bank. It was about something much bigger, something worth fighting for. The world was watching, and Monica was ready to make her voice heard. The following day, Monica woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. She had hardly slept the night before, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. The video was still everywhere. People were talking about it, sharing their thoughts online and making comments. Some were angry at the way she had been treated, while others questioned her. But it wasn't just the video that had her mind racing. The call from Detective Thompson had made everything feel too real. There was no turning back now. Monica got dressed in the same sharp suit she'd worn the day before. It was the same suit she always wore to meetings, the one that made her feel powerful and in control. But today it felt different. She wasn't just dressing for success, she was dressing for a fight. She grabbed her phone before leaving, opening the social media app to see the latest updates. The comments were still coming in, some supportive, others skeptical. But one message stood out. "I can't believe this happened to you. I had a similar experience at the same bank. You're not alone." Monica's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone. There were others who had been treated poorly too. The thought gave her a little strength. When she got to the police station, Detective Thompson was waiting for her in a small, quiet room. His face was kind, but his tone was serious. "Ms. James," he said, standing up as she entered. "Thank you for meeting with me." Monica nodded, sitting down across from him. "I just want to get this over with." "I understand," he said, sitting back down. "We've watched the video, and I want to hear your side of the story. It's important that we get all the facts straight." Monica took a deep breath and started to explain what had happened in the bank. She talked about the teller's cold treatment, how he questioned her check, and how he made her feel like a criminal. She told him about the man who had stood up for her and how the manager had finally stepped in to help. "I never wanted any of this to happen," she said, her voice steady but quiet. "I just wanted to cash my check like everyone else." Detective Thompson listened carefully, making notes as she spoke. "It sounds like you were treated unfairly," he said after a pause. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Monica nodded, but the words didn't make her feel better. They didn't undo what had happened. "It's not just about me," she said. "It's about the way people like me are treated every day, like we don't belong." The detective looked at her with a new understanding. "You're not wrong," he said. "This isn't just about one incident. It's part of a bigger problem." Monica felt a wave of relief wash over her. Finally, someone understood. Finally, someone was listening. "We'll investigate the situation further," Detective Thompson continued. "But I need to ask, are you ready for what might come next? This could turn into something big." Monica hesitated. She hadn't thought much about what would happen after the video went viral. What if it got worse? What if people started attacking her for speaking out? But she knew deep down she couldn't turn back now. She had already made the decision to stand up for herself and for others who face the same kind of treatment. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "I want to do whatever I can to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The detective nodded. "You're brave, Ms. James. I'll keep you updated on any developments." Monica left the police station feeling lighter, though the road ahead still seemed uncertain. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had taken the first step toward making a difference. When she got back to her apartment, she logged onto her social media accounts and posted an update. She didn't just want to tell her story, she wanted to inspire others to share theirs. "Yesterday I went to the bank to cash a check. It should have been a simple transaction, but instead I was treated unfairly. I was questioned, judged, and made to feel like I didn't belong. This isn't just my story. It's the story of so many others who have been mistreated because of their race, gender, or appearance. We need to stop this. We need to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. I'm not going to stay silent anymore. I hope you don't either." She hit post and sat back staring at the screen. The comments started coming in almost immediately. Words of support, encouragement, and shared experiences. People were reaching out to her, telling their own stories of unfair treatment. Monica felt a mix of emotions: pride, fear, hope. That night, the news picked up her story. A reporter reached out for an interview, wanting to know more about what had happened at the bank and what Monica planned to do next. Monica agreed to speak, knowing this was her chance to make her voice heard. The next few days were a blur of interviews, social media posts, and messages from people who had experienced the same kind of treatment. Monica felt like she was on the front lines of something much bigger than herself. She wasn't just standing up for her own dignity anymore. She was standing up for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than because of who they were. But even as the support poured in, Monica knew the battle wasn't over. There were still people who would try to discredit her, who would try to silence her. There were still banks, businesses, and systems built on unfair rules. But Monica was ready. Monica couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so exhausted. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Interviews, messages, phone calls, and a growing number of people reaching out to her. She was grateful for the support, but it was overwhelming. Each night she fell into bed feeling like she couldn't keep up with the pace. But as tired as she was, she couldn't stop. There was no turning back now. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. She picked it up, recognizing the number. It was Detective Thompson. "Hello," she answered, her voice still hoarse from a long day. "Ms. James, it's Detective Thompson. I wanted to update you on our investigation." Monica straightened up in her chair, suddenly awake. "Go ahead. What's the news?" "We've been in touch with the bank. After reviewing the situation, it seems the teller who treated you poorly has a history of similar complaints from customers. It's not just you." Monica's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't surprised, but hearing it made her feel even more vindicated. "The bank is taking it seriously now," the detective continued. "We're recommending they take appropriate action, and they're cooperating with our investigation. We'll keep you posted." Monica nodded even though he couldn't see her. "Thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing." The call ended, and Monica sat back in her chair, letting the news sink in. For the first time in days, she felt a small sense of relief. The truth was coming to light, and the bank was finally acknowledging what had happened. But there was still a long way to go. Later that afternoon, Monica was invited to appear on a local news segment to talk about her experience. She'd agreed, knowing that the more people heard her story, the more likely it was that change could happen. The studio was busy when she arrived, lights and cameras set up in every corner of the room. A friendly producer showed her to the makeup chair, and she sat quietly, trying to calm her nerves. "Don't worry," the producer said with a smile. "You're doing great. Just be yourself." Monica nodded, though the butterflies in her stomach weren't going away. The last time she had spoken in front of a camera was years ago at a work presentation. This was different. This was personal. When they called her onto the set, she stood and walked to the chair, her heart beating faster with every step. She sat down across from the news anchor, a woman named Rachel, who gave her a reassuring smile. "Thank you for joining us today, Monica," Rachel said. "I know this isn't easy for you, but we're glad to have you here. Let's start by talking about what happened at the bank." Monica took a deep breath and began telling her story again. She talked about the way the teller treated her, the assumptions that were made, and how she felt standing in front of the counter, being judged in front of everyone. "It wasn't just about the check," Monica said, her voice calm but firm. "It was about the way I was treated, the way I felt invisible, like I didn't belong. I know I'm not the only one who's been through this, and I want to make sure it doesn't keep happening to people like me." Rachel nodded, looking at Monica with understanding. "This is something that a lot of people don't think about, but after your story went viral, it's clear that so many others have had similar experiences." Monica nodded. "Exactly. It's not just about one person or one incident. It's about a system that makes some people feel like they're less than others. I want to change that." The interview continued, but Monica felt a sense of purpose she hadn't had before. She wasn't just telling her story anymore. She was speaking up for everyone who had ever been treated like they didn't matter. When the segment finished, Rachel gave her a warm smile. "You did great, Monica. Thank you for sharing your story with us." Monica left the studio feeling a mix of emotions. She was proud of what she had said, but she also felt the weight of everything that had come with it. People were watching her now, and that was both empowering and terrifying. Over the next few days, the story continued to spread. More and more people came forward with their own stories of discrimination, and Monica felt a deep connection to them. She wasn't alone anymore. But the ripple effect didn't stop there. The bank, under growing pressure from the public, announced that they would be implementing new training for their staff and reviewing their policies to ensure something like this would never happen again. The teller who had treated Monica so badly was put on leave pending an internal review. Monica couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. It wasn't just her fight anymore. It was everyone's fight. One evening, as she sat on her couch scrolling through social media, Monica saw a message from the man who had stood up for her in the bank. He had shared a post, thanking her for her bravery and letting her know that he had filed a formal complaint about the incident. "You inspired me to speak up," he had written. "I'm proud of you." Monica's heart swelled. She had never asked for recognition, but she had made a difference. Her actions, her voice had started to change. As the days passed, Monica continued to share her story and listen to the stories of others. She became involved in a movement, one that was bigger than herself, pushing for changes in how people of color were treated in everyday situations. It wasn't just about banks, it was about workplaces, schools, stores, and public spaces. But even as she worked tirelessly to create change, Monica never forgot what had started it all. That one moment in the bank. The one moment when she had been made to feel like she didn't belong. That moment had turned into something much bigger. The days after the news segment felt like a blur to Monica. She had become the face of something bigger than herself, a movement calling for fairness and equality, something she never expected when she walked into the bank that fateful day. The public's response had been overwhelming. Messages of support flooded in, but so did messages of hate. Some people were angry at her for speaking out, calling her things she didn't deserve. Others questioned her motives, as though her fight for justice was somehow a personal attack. But Monica knew she couldn't focus on the negativity. She had to keep pushing forward. Over the next week, Monica met with a team of activists who had been working to address racial bias in everyday life. They talked about their experiences, shared ideas for change, and planned how they could turn this momentum into real action. Monica knew that her story was just one of many. She wasn't the only one who had faced these unfair systems. She was simply the one who had decided to stand up. In the middle of all the chaos, Monica received a call from the bank. Her stomach twisted when she saw the name on the caller ID, but she answered it anyway. "Ms. James?" The voice on the other end was polite but distant. "This is David Reynolds, the manager at your local branch. I'm calling to discuss the incident with the teller." Monica took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Go ahead. I want to personally apologize for the way you were treated. We've reviewed the situation thoroughly, and we are taking immediate action. The teller has been put on suspension, and we're working on policy changes to ensure something like this doesn't happen again." Monica listened, but the apology felt hollow. She'd heard too many empty apologies before. "And what about the way I was made to feel in front of other customers? You can't take that back." "I understand, and you're right. What you went through wasn't just about the teller's actions. It's about the bigger issue of how people are treated because of assumptions." Monica's heart started to race. Was this the change she had been hoping for? "What exactly are you going to do about it?" "We're starting by implementing bias training for all of our employees. We want to create a more welcoming and fair environment for all our customers. We're also looking into ways we can improve our customer service policies to ensure they're truly inclusive." Monica wanted to feel satisfied with his response, but part of her remained skeptical. Actions spoke louder than words. She had heard similar promises before, only for them to fall short. "I'll believe it when I see it," she said, her voice firm. David hesitated before responding. "I understand, and again, we're truly sorry for what happened. If there's anything else we can do, please let us know." Monica hung up the phone, her thoughts swirling. This wasn't the end, but it felt like a step in the right direction. She wasn't going to settle for empty promises, but she was willing to give them a chance to prove they were committed to change. The following weekend, Monica spoke at a rally for racial equality. The crowd was small but passionate. She shared her story again, but this time, it was more than just about the bank. It was about the daily struggles people of color faced when dealing with unfair systems. "Change doesn't happen overnight," Monica told the crowd, "but every step counts. Every voice raised in protest matters. I didn't ask to be the one standing here today, but now that I'm here, I'm not backing down." The crowd cheered, and Monica felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't known before. Her voice had power, and she was going to keep using it. Later that evening, Monica sat down at her desk, the weight of the world still on her shoulders. But she wasn't alone. She had a community of people standing with her, and together they could make a difference. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it was a message from the man who had stood up for her in the bank. "Just wanted to let you know I've been talking to some friends about what happened. We're planning to organize a community meeting at the bank to discuss these issues and make sure things really change. If you're interested, we'd love for you to be a part of it." Monica's heart swelled. This was what it was all about, real, tangible change. Not just in the policies of the bank, but in the hearts and minds of the people. She replied quickly, "I'm in. Let's make it happen." For the first time in a long while, Monica felt hopeful. She didn't know exactly what the future would hold, but she knew that she wasn't backing down. She had started something, and this was just the beginning. The days grew colder, and as autumn stretched toward winter, Monica found herself balancing her work with a new role she hadn't expected. The rally had sparked something in her, a fire she hadn't realized was burning. She'd spent years focusing on her career, her art, but now her purpose seemed clearer than ever: to fight for a world where everyone was treated fairly, no matter their skin color, background, or the assumptions others made about them. The community meeting at the bank was set for the following weekend, and Monica was determined to be there. She wanted to ensure that the voices of people who had been treated unfairly were heard, that their stories were woven into a larger narrative that couldn't be ignored. As the day of the meeting approached, Monica's anxiety mounted. She had been invited to speak, but the pressure to be perfect, to represent so many people, felt overwhelming. What if her words weren't strong enough? What if she said the wrong thing? She shook her head and reminded herself why she was doing this. It wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. That Saturday, Monica arrived at the bank with a small group of people who had gathered to discuss the issues. The atmosphere was different from the cold formality of the bank's interior. People were talking, laughing, and sharing stories of their experiences with the institution. Some were nervous, but they were united by a shared purpose: to hold the bank accountable and to push for real change. Monica stood at the front, her heart pounding in her chest. The bank's manager, David Reynolds, had agreed to meet with the group, but Monica knew that even if he seemed willing to listen, the real work would be in changing the system, not just one individual. David greeted the group with a practiced smile, though Monica could see the tension in his eyes. He knew that this wasn't just a group of angry customers. It was a movement. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with us," David said, his voice calm, but there was a hint of unease underneath. "We appreciate your feedback and are committed to improving. We've already started working on some changes." Monica's hand clenched at her side. She had heard those words before. She couldn't let them be empty promises. "I appreciate that you're here, David," Monica said, her voice steady. "But it's not just about changing policies. It's about changing attitudes. It's about ensuring that when someone walks into this bank, they're treated with respect, no matter their background, no matter their skin color." David nodded slowly, clearly trying to hold on to his composure. "We understand that. And that's why we're bringing in experts to help us with the training. We're committed to making this a place where everyone feels welcome." Monica wasn't satisfied. She could feel the weight of the room, the energy of people who had been ignored for far too long. "If you're truly committed to change," she said, "it's not enough to just train your employees. You need to make sure you're holding people accountable when they don't follow through. People need to feel safe here. And I'm not talking about the physical safety of being in this building. I'm talking about the emotional safety of walking in without being judged based on how you look." The silence that followed was heavy. Monica could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her. She didn't look away. David shifted uncomfortably. "We're working on that too. It'll take time, but we want to make sure the changes are sustainable." "I understand that change doesn't happen overnight," Monica replied, her voice calm but firm. "But it needs to start now. It's been long enough." As the meeting continued, Monica listened to other voices joining hers. Voices of people who had felt excluded, who had been treated unfairly, who had been made to feel like they didn't belong. Each story echoed with the same themes: assumptions based on appearance, the slow erosion of trust in institutions meant to serve everyone equally. But with each voice that spoke up, Monica could feel something shifting. The room, once tense, began to feel like a place of possibility. People weren't just there to complain, they were there to demand change. After the meeting ended, Monica took a moment to speak with David privately. She didn't want to let him off the hook too easily. "I know you're trying, David," Monica said, "but I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the bank. It's about something much bigger. It's about every institution, every place that people like me walk into, and we're automatically seen as suspicious or unworthy. We need change across the board. We need to see it in the policies, and we need to see it in the attitudes of the people who work here." David was silent for a moment, and Monica wasn't sure what he was thinking. She could see him struggling to put his thoughts together, but she wasn't going to give him an easy way out. "I hear you," he said slowly, "and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I am listening." Monica nodded, not fully convinced, but willing to give him a chance to prove he meant what he said. As she walked out of the bank, her thoughts were racing. The meeting had gone better than expected, but she knew there was still so much work to do. The path to real change wasn't a straight line. It was going to take time, persistence, and the courage to keep fighting, even when things didn't seem to be moving fast enough. When she got home, Monica received a message from the man who had stood up for her at the bank. "That was powerful. You spoke for all of us today. Let's keep this momentum going." She smiled as she read his words. "We will," she typed back. "This is just the beginning." And it was. The journey ahead would be difficult, but Monica knew that with every step, she was pushing the world towards something better. Weeks passed, And the echoes of that meeting at the bank continued to ripple through Monica's life. She hadn't expected everything to change overnight, but there was a sense of progress she could feel, a shift in the air, as if people were starting to pay attention, starting to listen. Monica's phone was ringing more often than usual. Interviews, speaking engagements, and invitations to panels flooded her schedule. She was now seen not just as a graphic designer, but as a voice for fairness and change. Some days it felt overwhelming, like the weight of everyone's expectations was heavier than she was prepared to carry. But other days it felt empowering, as if the world was finally ready to hear what she had to say. She had started to notice a change in the way people treated her too. Colleagues, friends, even strangers. There was a new kind of respect in their eyes. But there was also a deeper sense of awareness, a realization that the world wasn't as fair as it should be, and they didn't want to be silent about it anymore. One evening, Monica found herself sitting in a coffee shop meeting a woman named Rachel, who had reached out to her after the rally. Rachel had grown up in the same city as Monica, but their experiences were worlds apart. "Monica, I've been thinking a lot about what you said at the rally," Rachel started, her voice quiet but serious. "I can't imagine what it's been like for you, but hearing your story, it made me realize how much I don't see. I don't see the everyday struggles that people face because of their race. I don't see how things like bias just sit there in the background, waiting to strike." Monica listened, surprised by Rachel's openness. "It's not easy to see, but it's always there. For me, it's the small things that add up. The looks, the assumptions, the way people treat you like you don't belong." Rachel nodded, her eyes sincere. "I want to help. I want to use my privilege to speak up, to do something. What can I do?" Monica paused. It wasn't every day that someone asked her what they could do. Most people assumed they could make a difference without understanding the depth of the issue. But Rachel's words felt different. She was asking, truly asking, how to be part of the solution. "Start by listening," Monica said softly. "A lot of people don't even listen. They hear what they want to hear, or they ignore what makes them uncomfortable. If you listen first, it's easier to understand what needs to change. And then speak up when you see injustice, no matter how small." Rachel's expression brightened. "That's it, isn't it? It's not enough to just notice. It's about acting on it too." "Exactly," Monica replied. "If enough people stand up, it can't be ignored." Their conversation continued long into the evening, filled with ideas for what they could do to raise awareness. By the time they left the coffee shop, Monica felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work she was doing wasn't just hers. It was part of a larger movement, one that needed every voice, every action, to create real change. As the weeks turned into months, the momentum didn't slow. Monica, along with Rachel and others who had been inspired by her story, organized community forums, launched campaigns to educate people about racial bias, and collaborated with local organizations working toward justice. One evening, while preparing for a speaking engagement at a university, Monica received a call from her mother. "I saw you on TV again," her mother said with a smile in her voice. "You looked amazing, Monica. I'm so proud of you." Monica smiled, feeling the warmth of her mother's words. "Thanks, Mom. It's been a wild ride." "You've always had a way with words," her mother said. "You don't just talk to people, Monica. You make them feel. You make them think. That's powerful." Monica paused, thinking about everything that had happened. It was true, she wasn't just speaking to people. She was speaking for them. She was speaking for the ones who couldn't or wouldn't speak up. And she was starting to see that change was possible, even if it came slowly. "I just want to make things better, Mom. For everyone. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I think we're headed in the right direction." Her mother's voice softened. "You're already making a difference, you sweetie. Never forget that." That night, as Monica stood in front of a packed auditorium full of eager students, she felt an energy like she'd never known. Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. It was steady, filled with conviction, as she spoke about the importance of speaking out against injustice. The students hung on to her every word. She could see the curiosity in their eyes, the understanding that was forming in their minds. "This is about more than just racism," Monica said as she wrapped up her speech. "It's about challenging every system that tries to divide us. Every time we let an assumption, a stereotype, or a bias take root, we're allowing something broken to stay broken. But when we stand together, when we refuse to stay silent, that's how we fix it." The room erupted in applause. Monica felt a sense of pride, but also a quiet, determined certainty. This wasn't just about her story anymore. It was about the future. It was about creating a world where no one had to walk into a bank or a room or a street and feel less than. As she left the auditorium, Monica checked her phone and saw a text from Rachel. "I've been talking to some people about organizing a petition. We're going to push for more systemic changes in local businesses. Are you in?" Monica smiled and typed back, "Of course. Let's do this." The ripple effect had begun, and it was only growing stronger. The momentum of change that had begun in the bank's sterile lobby was now a wildfire. Monica found herself at the forefront of something bigger than she'd ever imagined. Every day was filled with meetings, phone calls, and interviews. She was becoming a face of resistance, a voice for fairness in places where it had long been absent. But it wasn't easy. The more attention Monica gained, the more she felt the pressure to live up to people's expectations. She had become a symbol, but that meant every word, every action was now scrutinized. She wasn't just advocating for herself anymore. She was advocating for every person who had ever felt overlooked, judged, or silenced. One Thursday evening, as Monica sat at her kitchen table, preparing for another community panel, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Rachel. "We need to talk. It's about the petition. There's something you should know." Monica frowned. Rachel's messages were usually full of optimism, never full of dread. She dialed Rachel's number immediately. "Hey, what's up?" Monica asked. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I think the bank is pushing back," Rachel said, her voice tight with frustration. "We've had some complaints. Several people are saying they were approached by employees asking them to drop their signatures. Some are even claiming they're being told that supporting the petition could cost them their jobs." Monica's blood ran cold. She took a deep breath. "Are you serious?" "Yeah. We have people backing out. Some are scared, and others, I think, are just intimidated." Monica rubbed her temples. She had known it wouldn't be easy, but this was worse than she'd expected. The idea that the bank, or anyone, would try to silence people in this way was maddening. "We can't let this slide," Monica said, her voice firm now, a fire rekindling inside her. "We need to make this public. If they're going to try to intimidate people, we have to expose it. We can't let them get away with this." Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure? This could get messy." Monica thought for a moment. She had faced adversity before, but never like this. However, she had come too far to back down. "I'm sure. This isn't just about a petition anymore. It's about standing up to a system that thinks it can do whatever it wants, no matter who gets hurt in the process." "I'll do it," Rachel said, her voice resolute. "We'll take it to the press." The next day, Monica and Rachel organized a press conference. They called out the bank for its attempts to silence their movement, for using fear to manipulate and control people's choices. They invited community members to stand with them, to speak out against the injustice they were witnessing. Monica was nervous, but when she stepped up to the microphone, she felt a surge of purpose. She had spoken before, many times, but this moment was different. This wasn't just about her story anymore. It was about the stories of everyone who had been quietly, systematically oppressed. "I'm here today because enough is enough," Monica began, her voice steady but powerful. "We are no longer going to be silenced, not by intimidation, not by fear, not by anyone who thinks they can control us. We are here to make one thing clear. We will not back down." The reporters crowded around, their cameras clicking, capturing every word. Monica's heart pounded in her chest, but she pushed through the nerves, her words flowing with clarity and conviction. "What the bank is doing is wrong," Monica continued. "They are using fear to divide us, to keep us from fighting for what's right. But I'm here to say that we will not be divided. We will stand together. We will speak out, even when it's hard, even when they try to make us afraid. This is about more than just this bank. This is about fairness. It's about equality." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then slowly, one by one, people began to stand and clap. The room filled with the sound of applause, quiet at first, then growing louder, as if the entire room had been holding its breath. Monica glanced at Rachel, who gave her a nod of approval. They had made their stand. They had exposed the truth, and now it was out in the open. There was no turning back. After the press conference, things moved quickly. The bank issued a statement denying any wrongdoing, but it was too late. The community was already mobilizing, demanding accountability, and the press coverage continued to grow. People from all over the city and even from other states began to show their support. They sent messages, shared their own stories, and stood in solidarity with Monica and her cause. The pressure on the bank intensified. People were calling for a boycott, for a deeper investigation into the institution's practices. Social media exploded with support for Monica and the movement, and the hashtag number Fairness for All began trending. Monica, though exhausted, couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was the fight of everyone who had ever been treated unfairly, everyone who had ever been told they didn't matter. But even as victory seemed within reach, Monica knew the real work was just beginning. She had started something important, but change didn't happen overnight. It took constant pressure, constant pushing, and constant willingness to stand up and speak the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it made others. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time in a long while, Monica didn't feel alone. She felt part of something much larger, a movement that wasn't just about one woman, one petition, or one bank. It was about all of them, all of the voices that had been ignored, all of the stories that had been untold. Together, they were rewriting the narrative. The weeks after the press conference were a whirlwind for Monica. The attention on her and the cause had only grown stronger. Everywhere she went, people recognized her, sometimes with admiration, other times with curiosity. It was strange to be at the center of such a movement, but Monica had learned to embrace it. She knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she couldn't turn back now. The bank had yet to make a public apology or take responsibility for the pressure they had placed on their customers. But the pressure from the community and the media was becoming harder for them to ignore. Even some of their longtime clients began pulling their business elsewhere, voicing their support for the petition and for the movement. Monica had become a regular on local news programs, speaking about systemic biases, the importance of standing up to institutions, and how individuals could make a real difference. Her voice was heard not just in her city, but beyond. Requests for interviews came in from across the country, and even international outlets were reaching out. Monica had gone from a local designer to a national figure of resistance. But with every new platform, the weight of her message seemed to grow heavier. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk preparing for another interview, her phone rang. It was Rachel. "Monica, we did it," Rachel said, her voice filled with excitement. "The bank's board met today. They're offering to sit down with us. They want to discuss how to resolve this situation." Monica blinked, momentarily stunned. It was a victory, but it also meant more work ahead. The opportunity to have a conversation with the bank's leadership was a chance to effect real change, but it would only matter if they were willing to listen and take responsibility for their actions. "Are you sure about this?" Monica asked, trying to process the sudden turn of events. "What are they offering?" Rachel hesitated for a moment before answering. "They haven't given full details yet, but they say they want to work together on a solution. They want to repair the damage to their reputation, but also address some of the deeper issues around their policies. They're ready to meet with us." Monica sat back in her chair, taking a deep breath. This could be a turning point, but she knew it could also be a negotiation. She wasn't going to settle for an apology. She wanted real change, policies that would protect people, fair treatment for everyone, no exceptions. "I'll go," Monica said firmly, "but only if we can bring in a group of community leaders, people who've been directly affected by the bank's actions. I'm not doing this alone." Rachel agreed. "Of course. I'll make sure we have a solid group for this. We'll go in strong." The meeting was scheduled for the following week. As the day approached, Monica found herself torn. She had spent years as an independent professional, building her career through hard work, overcoming obstacles, and proving herself. But this fight wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone who had ever felt powerless against larger institutions, everyone who had been dismissed, overlooked, or treated unfairly because of who they were. She spent the night before the meeting going over her notes, making sure she was clear on her goals. She wasn't just looking for an apology. She wanted policies that would protect employees and customers from the kind of discrimination she had faced. She wanted the bank to not only fix their current practices, but to set an example for others in the industry. The following morning, Monica walked into the bank's headquarters. Her heart was steady, but her mind was racing. Rachel and a few community leaders accompanied her. They were all dressed sharply, but the atmosphere was tense. The bank executives were already seated around a long conference table, their faces neutral, some more defensive than others. Monica took a seat at the head of the table, facing them. The room was silent for a few moments as everyone found their seats. "We're here today because we believe in fairness," Monica began, her voice calm but resolute. "We believe that businesses, especially those in positions of power like this one, have a responsibility to their customers. When a business allows systemic bias to go unchecked, it harms more than just individuals. It harms the community, and it harms the business itself." She looked around the room, making sure every executive was paying attention. "We're not here for an apology," she continued. "We're here because we want to see change. We want your policies to reflect the values of equality and fairness. We want to ensure that no one, regardless of their background, will ever have to experience what I did in your bank or anywhere else." The room remained quiet, the executives exchanging glances. A few moments later, one of them, a man in his mid-50s with graying hair, cleared his throat. "We understand the concerns you've raised," he said, "and we acknowledge that there have been failures in the past. We're committed to working with you to address the issues. We're open to revisiting our policies and training programs to ensure something like this doesn't happen again." Monica felt a flicker of cautious optimism, but she remained focused. "That's a start," she said, her voice steady. "But we need specifics. We need to know what you're going to do. What are you going to put in place to make sure your employees are held accountable? How will you ensure that your customers, especially those from marginalized communities, are treated with the same respect and dignity as everyone else?" The executives exchanged looks again, and a woman at the far end of the table spoke up. "We can set up an advisory board to monitor these issues, and we're open to collaborating with local community organizations. We can also ensure that our staff receives more thorough and ongoing training in anti-bias education." Monica nodded, but she knew that words were only the beginning. "I want your commitment in writing," she said, "and we need a timeline. We won't settle for vague promises. We need real change, and we need to see it happen quickly." The room was quiet for a long moment before the man with the graying hair spoke again. "You'll have our commitment. We'll send you the proposal within the next week, and we're prepared to meet regularly to ensure that we are meeting your expectations." Monica stood up, her expression serious. "Good. But remember, this isn't just about fixing your reputation. This is about fixing the systems that allowed this to happen in the first place. If you're truly committed to change, we'll be here every step of the way. Don't let us down." With that, Monica and her group stood and walked out of the room, leaving the bank executives to contemplate the road ahead. The battle wasn't over, but this meeting was a victory, a step toward the change they'd been fighting for. As Monica left the building, her phone buzzed with messages from Rachel. "We did it. They're taking us seriously. Now we keep pushing." Monica looked around at the city she loved, the city that had now become a symbol of resistance. She smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. The days following the meeting were a blur of activity. Monica had come away from the meeting with the bank feeling cautiously hopeful. They had agreed to make changes, but she knew better than to expect immediate results. Real change was always a slow process, and the hardest part of it often came in the form of follow-through. Rachel was quick to rally the community, pushing forward with a renewed sense of urgency. "We have to keep the pressure on," she said during their first meeting after the bank's proposal. "We can't just let them think they can make a few tweaks and walk away." Monica agreed. They had made progress, but it wasn't enough yet. She had seen too many institutions make hollow promises in the past, only to let things slip back into old patterns. This time, they needed to be more vigilant than ever. Over the next few weeks, Monica and Rachel met regularly with other community leaders. They organized rallies, community forums, and continued their media outreach. They ensured that the bank knew they wouldn't back down until they had concrete, measurable changes. Meanwhile, the bank started making good on some of their promises. They sent a proposal outlining their plans to address the issues. There was talk of new anti-bias training for employees, an independent audit of their hiring practices, and a commitment to making their customer service more inclusive. On the surface, it seemed like progress, but Monica knew they needed to keep pushing. The details of the proposal were vague, and there was no clear timeline for implementation. The more she dug into the proposal, the more questions she had. Why only one advisory board? Monica asked one evening, looking over the document with Rachel. Why not involve more community leaders from diverse backgrounds? The people who have been directly affected should have a seat at the table, not just the ones the bank feels comfortable with. Rachel nodded, understanding where Monica was coming from. Exactly. We need more representation. If they really want to show they're serious, they'll broaden their approach. They can't just handpick a few safe people and call it a day. Monica made it clear that they would not accept the proposal as it was. In the months that followed, Monica's life became a whirlwind of upheaval and transformation. What had started as a single woman's defiant stand against an unjust system had erupted into a nationwide movement. Streets filled with protests, social media buzzed with hashtags bearing her name. Her face was plastered across news outlets, hailed as a symbol of resilience, and reviled by those who saw her as a threat to the status quo. Finally, after weeks of public pressure and deafening silence, the bank's CEO stepped forward. It was a spectacle, a live broadcast, carefully staged to convey contrition. The polished executive stared into the camera, his carefully rehearsed apology reverberating through living rooms across the country. He admitted to errors and oversights, but fell short of naming the systemic rot that Monica had so boldly exposed. Monica watched the broadcast from her small apartment, her jaw tight. When the CEO promised sweeping reforms, retraining staff, fairer policies, and an oversight committee, her phone buzzed with messages of congratulations. But Monica wasn't smiling. She knew the game. Promises were cheap. Change was hard. The next day, she stood outside the bank's gleaming headquarters, flanked by Rachel and dozens of supporters holding signs that read, "Actions, not apologies." The crowd chanted her name, their voices echoing off the glass facade of the building. Cameras flashed as Monica stepped forward to address the press. "This apology is a beginning," she said, her voice clear but charged with emotion. "But words are not enough. Promises mean nothing without accountability. We've heard it all before. Empty words, forgotten pledges. Well, not this time. We'll be watching, and if they fail to act, we'll be back." Her words rippled across the nation, igniting fresh outrage. People from every corner of the country began sharing their own stories of injustice, stories of discrimination, exploitation, and systemic abuse. Monica's inbox flooded with emails. Her phone didn't stop ringing. What she had started had grown beyond her, becoming a collective roar for change. Months later, Monica stood at the podium of a packed auditorium, the energy in the room electric. The event wasn't just a celebration of progress, it was a call to arms. The crowd before her was diverse, young and old, rich and poor, united by a shared hunger for justice. As she gripped the microphone, her voice rang out, steady and powerful. "When I first walked into that bank, I was just one person trying to cash a check. I was small, I was dismissed. But look at us now." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. "We've turned their indifference into a movement. This isn't about me, it's about us. It's about building a world where fairness isn't a privilege, but a right. For us, for our children, for the ones who came before us and the ones who will come after." The applause was deafening, a thunderous wave of support that left Monica momentarily overwhelmed. But then, she raised her hand, silencing the crowd. Her eyes burned with determination. "They will fight us," she warned. "They will try to divide us. They will tell us it's too hard, too big, too much. But they're wrong. Change is coming, and it's because of you, because you refuse to stay silent. So I ask you, will you stand with me?" The crowd erupted, chanting her name, their voices shaking the very walls of the hall. Monica stood tall, her chest swelling with pride and purpose. Later that night, Monica stood outside under the cool blanket of stars, the echoes of the rally still humming in her ears. Rachel approached, her face lit with quiet admiration. "You've done something incredible, Monica," Rachel said, her voice filled with awe. "You've changed the world." Monica's gaze lingered on the night sky, the weight of the journey etched into her features. "No," she said softly. "We did, and we're not done yet." But as she walked home alone, the flickering streetlights casting long shadows, Monica felt the toll of the fight. Every threat, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt came rushing back. Yet beneath the exhaustion was something stronger, an unshakable resolve. The battle wasn't over. The system wouldn't crumble overnight. But Monica knew this. The tide had turned, and she was no longer standing against it. She was the tide, a force that wouldn't be silenced, wouldn't be stopped. And as she closed her eyes that night, Monica made herself a promise. No matter how hard they pushed back, she would push harder. Because this wasn't just a fight for her, it was a fight for everyone. And it was a fight she intended to win.